At some point in your life, you have probably held a Coca-Cola in your hands. Maybe during a Sunday family lunch. Maybe at a soccer game in the middle of a loud crowd. Maybe on a summer afternoon when the heat was so intense that nothing else made sense except an ice-cold can. That moment, simple, ordinary, is experienced by billions of people every day, in more than 200 countries, in completely different languages, in cultures that share almost nothing with one another. And at the center of it all, the same red can, the same white cursive logo, the same taste. Today, Coca-Cola is far more than a beverage. It is a symbol. According to the company's own data, more than 2 billion servings of Coca-Cola products are consumed every single day around the world. The brand's logo is recognized by 94% of the global population, a number that surpasses any national flag, any religious symbol, any other human creation. But this level of global presence did not happen by accident. Behind the brand lies a long chain of human decisions, experiments, failures, risky bets, brilliant marketing strategies, and moments of vision that, over decades, transformed a modest drink sold for 5 cents in an Atlanta pharmacy into a global empire. And here is something most people don't know. The story of Coca-Cola is not the story of just one man. It begins with a wounded war veteran searching for relief from pain that never left him. And it grows in extraordinary ways when another man, with a completely different personality, sees the potential hidden inside a simple formula. To understand how Coca-Cola became one of the most powerful brands in history, we must examine every piece of this puzzle. The invention of a drink, the early attempts to sell it, the development of a system capable of scaling, and the strategic decisions that eventually pushed the product far beyond the borders of the United States. The journey from a pharmacy experiment to a global symbol is not a straight line. It is a story shaped by invention, crisis, adaptation, and vision. And it begins, like so many great stories, with a wound that never fully healed. The year was 1865. The American Civil War had ended. But for thousands of veterans, the war never truly ended. It simply changed location, moving from the battlefield into their own bodies. Cities in the South were devastated. Local economies were struggling to survive. And men returning home carried wounds that doctors did not fully understand how to treat. One of those men was John Stith Pemberton. Pemberton had served as a Confederate officer throughout most of the war. In April of 1865, during the Battle of Columbus, Georgia, one of the final engagements of the conflict, he was severely wounded. A saber strike left him with a deep scar across his chest and with chronic pain that would follow him for the rest of his life. The conventional treatment at the time was morphine. Doctors prescribed it freely. Soldiers relied on it to function. And Pemberton, like many veterans of that generation, developed a dependency that would become both his curse and, ironically, the driving force behind one of the greatest commercial inventions in history. But Pemberton was not an ordinary man. Before the war, he had already established himself as a respected pharmacist and chemist in Atlanta. He was not a traveling medicine salesman or a carnival charlatan, as later researchers have taken care to clarify. He operated a fully equipped laboratory with advanced equipment for the time, and he claimed the ability to manufacture every chemical and pharmaceutical preparation used in the arts and sciences. When he returned from the war, Pemberton carried not only physical pain, but also the scientific determination to find alternatives to morphine. To understand the environment of that era, we must remember what pharmacies were like in the late 19th century. They were not the sterile, standardized stores we know today. They were semi-improvised laboratories where pharmacists mixed their own formulas, created syrups, and developed tonics that promised everything from increased energy to digestive relief. The market for patent medicines was vast, loosely regulated, and extremely profitable. In this world, Pemberton was a natural experimenter. Before the war, he had created several medicinal compounds that enjoyed modest local popularity. After the war, he returned to the laboratory with renewed urgency. He needed to find a genuine alternative to morphine. His first major attempt was a product called Pemberton's French wine coca. The inspiration came from a popular European product, Vin Mariani, a French wine infused with coca leaf extract that had gained an impressive list of admirers, including, according to historical records, Pope Leo XIII himself. Pemberton took the idea further. To the mixture of wine and coca leaves, he added extract from cola nuts, an African plant rich in caffeine, along with other tropical ingredients. The result was an alcoholic beverage with stimulating properties that he marketed as a tonic for the nervous system, a remedy for headaches, a treatment for depression, and, with an irony that only history can produce, a cure for opium addiction. The drink sold reasonably well, but in late 1885, something changed. Fulton County, Georgia, where Atlanta was located, passed a prohibition law banning alcohol. The product Pemberton had created suddenly faced extinction, and it was this crisis, not sudden inspiration, that pushed him in a new direction. Inside Pemberton's home on Marietta Street stood a large industrial mixing and filtering machine that occupied 2 floors of the building. That was where he worked. During the months that followed the prohibition threat, Pemberton began reformulating his drink. The challenge was clear: remove the alcohol without losing the stimulating properties or the appealing taste. He sent samples of new versions to pharmacies around Atlanta. His nephews helped collect feedback from customers. It was an iterative process filled with trial and error. One of the most important adjustments was the addition of citric acid, which balanced the syrup's intense sweetness. Other modifications involved aromatic oils, plant extract ratios, and sugar levels. Finally, in May of 1886, specifically May 8th, according to historical records, Pemberton believed the formula was complete. He poured the syrup into a ceramic jug and walked through the streets of Atlanta to Jacob's Pharmacy, a popular downtown establishment with one of the busiest soda fountains in the city. There, pharmacist Willis Venable began serving the new drink. The price, 5 cents per glass. What happened next includes a fascinating detail history almost forgot. According to historical accounts, pharmacy employee, probably an anonymous soda fountain clerk, made the discovery that completed the product. Instead of mixing the syrup with plain water, he used carbonated water from the soda fountain. The effect was immediate. The bubbles enhanced the flavor, making the drink livelier, brighter, and more refreshing. Whether intentional or accidental, this moment gave birth to carbonated Coca-Cola. The first advertisement appeared in the Atlanta Journal in May 1886. It described the drink as delicious, refreshing, exhilarating, invigorating. Hand-painted signs soon appeared across the city saying, "Drink Coca-Cola, 5 cents." During the first months, sales were modest, about 9 servings per day. Nothing suggested what the future would bring. But another man involved in this story made a decision that still appears on every bottle produced today. His name was Frank M. Robinson. Robinson was Pemberton's accountant and business partner. He was not a chemist, but he had a strong instinct for communication. When Pemberton introduced the drink, Robinson believed it needed a memorable name. He looked at the 2 key ingredients, coca leaves and cola nuts. His idea was simple: combine the 2 names. Coca-Cola. He also believed that 2 capital CS would look visually powerful in advertising. Taking a pen, Robinson wrote the name in elegant Spencerian cursive, a stylish form of handwriting popular in the 19th century. That simple act of handwriting in 1886 still appears today on every Coca-Cola can, bottle, and advertisement produced around the world. It may be the most valuable piece of handwriting in human history. While Coca-Cola was taking its first steps in the world, John Pemberton's life was collapsing. Years of morphine dependence had taken their toll. His physical health was deteriorating quickly, His financial situation was fragile. Running a pharmaceutical laboratory was expensive, and the still modest sales of Coca-Cola were not enough to cover his debts. But there was another problem. Addiction was expensive, and Pemberton needed money. As his condition worsened, he began doing something that, looking back, seems almost incomprehensible. He started selling portions of the rights to the Coca-Cola formula to different investors. A share here, a share there. He probably saw Coca-Cola as just one more experimental product among many, one bet among several, not necessarily the most important one. But there was a strange ambivalence in all of this. According to historical records, at one point Pemberton admitted to an Atlanta journalist that he had a feeling his formula might one day become a national beverage. There was an intuition in him, vague but persistent, that he had created something bigger than he could fully understand. Because of that, he tried to preserve at least part of the company for his son, Charles. That decision would complicate things considerably. Charles Pemberton had his own struggles with drugs and was described by contemporaries as unstable and difficult to deal with. For a time, he claimed rights to the Coca-Cola name, selling his own versions of the drink independently, reportedly a cruder mixture, while his father was still alive. In 1888, John Stith Pemberton sold his remaining stake in Coca-Cola for $300, the equivalent of a little over $10,000 today, to an Atlanta pharmacist named Asa Griggs Candler. On August 16, 1888, Pemberton died of stomach cancer. He was 57 years old. He died poor and completely unaware that he had invented one of the most valuable products in human history. Few moments in the story of modern capitalism feel as dramatically unjust as this one. The man who created Coca-Cola never saw the fortune it would generate. His wife would spend the rest of her life in poverty. Charles would die only a few years later, reportedly found with opium beside his body. The formula, however, that precise combination of plant extracts, sugar, and aromatic oils created in a two-story laboratory in Georgia, was about to change the world. And the man who would make that happen had a completely different personality from the inventor. Asa Griggs Candler was born on December 30th, 1851, in rural Georgia. Unlike Pemberton, who was a scientist by both training and temperament, Candler was above all a businessman, not just a capable merchant, but a strategist with an almost instinctive talent for understanding what consumers wanted. When Candler first tasted Coca-Cola, he recognized something Pemberton had never fully seen. The drink did not need to be medicine in order to have value. It needed to be pleasure. Where Pemberton saw a formula, Candler saw a product. Where others saw a questionable medicinal tonic, he saw a national brand waiting to be built. Between 1888 and 1891, Candler spent a total of about $2,300 acquiring the remaining rights to Coca-Cola from all the various stakeholders, including the problematic Charles Pemberton. That amount, equivalent to roughly $77,000 today, purchased a product that at the time was selling only 9 servings per day in a single Atlanta pharmacy. It seemed like a modest investment. In reality, it would become one of the most profitable purchases in the history of business. In 1892, Candler formally organized the company and founded the Coca-Cola Company as a Georgia corporation with an initial capitalization of $100,000. Besides Candler himself, the company included his brother John S. Candler, Frank Robinson, the accountant who had named the drink, and 2 additional partners. The company was officially in operation, and Candler had plans that went far beyond 9 servings per day. What followed was a marketing revolution unlike anything the 19th century business world had seen before. Candler believed in a principle that psychology would only formally describe decades later: the mere exposure effect. The idea is simple. The more people see something, the more they tend to like it. Familiarity creates trust. Trust creates desire. Desire creates purchases. So Candler set out to flood the world with the name Coca-Cola. Posters appeared in towns and cities across the United States. Storefront signs displayed the red and white logo. Calendars, clocks, pharmacy trays, fans, and scales were produced bearing the Coca-Cola name. In 1891, the first year Candler fully controlled the company. Most merchants in Atlanta spent less than $100 annually on advertising. Candler spent $11,000. That would be almost $400,000 today. And in that first year alone, he printed 45,000 calendars featuring the Coca-Cola logo. But his most brilliant move was something else entirely: the coupons. In 1887, Candler created what is widely considered the first coupon in modern marketing history. These vouchers gave customers a free glass of Coca-Cola at participating soda fountains. The system was ingenious. The company paid for the free drink, not the pharmacist. Pharmacists were reimbursed when they returned the redeemed coupons. At the same time, Candler offered free barrels of syrup to pharmacists who were still hesitant about selling the drink. It created demand among consumers and built the distribution network at the same time. The results were extraordinary. Between 1894 and 1913, it is estimated that 1 out of every 9 Americans received a free Coca-Cola through these coupons. That meant roughly 8.5 million servings distributed when the U.S. population was between 60 and 90 million people. And to guarantee consistency, because Candler understood that a single bad experience with a drink could destroy sales in an entire region, he created something unprecedented: a professional traveling sales force. These representatives were not just salespeople. They were guardians of quality. They visited pharmacies to ensure the syrup was mixed properly with carbonated water. They checked that Coca-Cola signs were visible and properly placed. They made sure each point of sale delivered the same experience. In 1895, only 7 years after acquiring the formula, Candler publicly announced that Coca-Cola was being sold and consumed in every state and territory in the United States. Pemberton's intuition had come true. But Candler had not yet made his boldest move. There is something that separates good entrepreneurs from truly great ones. Good entrepreneurs create products. Great entrepreneurs create systems. Candler understood this instinctively. The model he built was elegant. The company produced concentrated syrup at a central facility in Atlanta. That syrup was shipped to soda fountains across the country. Local operators mixed the syrup with carbonated water and served it to customers. The company did not need to build factories in every city. It did not need to manage local operations. It did not need to distribute a finished beverage. It sold an ingredient, and it guarded the formula for that ingredient with absolute secrecy. From the earliest days of Candler's leadership, the Coca-Cola formula was treated like a state secret. In 1925, the company's board formally approved placing the secret recipe in a bank vault in Atlanta. To this day, the full formula, internally known as Merchandise 7X, is known by only a very small number of people within the company. This mystery was not just marketing mythology. It was a remarkably durable intellectual protection strategy that has lasted more than a century. But even with the success of the syrup model, Candler understood that there was still a structural limitation. To drink Coca-Cola, you had to go to a soda fountain, and that limitation was about to disappear. There's a small prologue in this story that is often forgotten. In 1894, in a shop in Vicksburg, Mississippi, a businessman named Joseph Biedenharn became so impressed by the growing demand for Coca-Cola at his soda fountain that he installed bottling equipment in the back of his store. He began selling cases of the drink to farmers and lumber workers along the Mississippi River. Technically, he became the first Coca-Cola bottler in history. But the Real Revolution came in 1899. 2 lawyers from Tennessee, Benjamin Franklin Thomas and Joseph B. Whitehead of Chattanooga, traveled to Atlanta with a proposal for Asa Candler. The idea was simple. What if Coca-Cola could be bottled on a large scale and sold in grocery stores, restaurants, and rural communities across the country? Candler listened. Then he made a decision that would later be described by historians as one of the most extraordinary business agreements ever signed, and one he himself apparently did not fully appreciate at the time. He granted them the exclusive rights to bottle Coca-Cola across nearly the entire United States. For how much? $1. A single dollar. The contract had no clear expiration date and required that each bottle be sold for 5 cents, a price that would remain unchanged until 1959. Candler remained focused on the syrup business. To him, bottled Coca-Cola seemed secondary, perhaps even inconvenient to the brand. He was wrong. Thomas and Whitehead partnered with another Chattanooga investor, John T. Lupton, and began building what would become the largest beverage distribution system in the world. The first bottling plant under the new contract opened in Chattanooga in 1899. The second opened in Atlanta the following year. And then came the idea that would accelerate the system's expansion dramatically. Realizing they didn't have the capital to build bottling plants everywhere themselves, they decided to create a franchise system. Local entrepreneurs would invest in and operate bottling plants within defined geographic territories. The model was decentralized, self-financing, and almost unstoppable. Within 20 years, the number of bottling plants grew from 2 to more than 1,000, with approximately 95% of them owned and operated locally. Coca-Cola had officially left the pharmacies and entered the world. With the rapid expansion of the bottling network came a new problem. Competitors, and there were many of them, began producing bottles designed to imitate Coca-Cola. Some were deliberate attempts to confuse consumers. Others simply tried to capitalize on the growing popularity of soft drinks. But the Coca-Cola bottlers became concerned. If customers couldn't visually distinguish the real Coca-Cola from the imitators, the brand would lose one of its greatest competitive advantages. In 1915, the company launched a challenge to glass manufacturers across the United States. Design a bottle so distinctive that anyone could recognize it even in the dark. Or, as the original brief reportedly stated, a bottle that could be recognized even if it were shattered on the ground. The Root Glass Company of Terre Haute, Indiana, won the competition. Their designers drew inspiration from an illustration of the cola nut they found in an encyclopedia. The result was an organic silhouette with curves that widened in the middle and tapered at both ends. It looked unique because it was unique. In 1916, Coca-Cola bottlers officially adopted the design. What began as a solution to a counterfeiting problem soon became one of the most recognizable objects of the 20th century. In 1977, the Contour Coca-Cola bottle received trademark protection from the United States Patent Office, an honor granted to only a handful of packaging designs in history. The bottle itself had become a brand. In 1919, the Candler family sold the Coca-Cola Company to a group of investors led by Honest Woodruff for $25 million. The company had strong foundations, but the future remained uncertain. Sugar prices had become unstable after World War I, and the business required strong leadership. In 1923, Ernest's son, Robert W. Woodruff, became president of the company at just 33 years old. It would become one of the most consequential leadership decisions in corporate history. Woodruff believed something that few others inside the company fully understood at the time. Coca-Cola should be available everywhere, anywhere in the world where someone might feel thirsty. This was not a motivational slogan. It was an operational strategy. Under Woodruff's leadership, bottling plants were established in dozens of countries. The company developed new packaging innovations, including the famous 6-bottle carton introduced in the 1920s, which made it practical for customers to take Coca-Cola home. In 1928, Coca-Cola began its long association with the Olympic Games in Amsterdam, a partnership that continues to this day. And then history intervened. World War II would transform Coca-Cola from an American brand into a truly global symbol. At the beginning of World War II, Coca-Cola was already bottled in 44 countries. But everything changed when the United States entered the war in 1941. Robert Woodruff issued a remarkable directive. He stated that every American soldier in uniform should be able to buy a bottle of Coca-Cola for 5 cents, wherever they were in the world, regardless of the cost to the company. This was not simply generosity. It was also patriotism, and it became one of the most ambitious logistical operations in corporate history. President Franklin Roosevelt granted Coca-Cola special permission to import sugar despite wartime rationing, because the drink was considered essential to troop morale. In 1943, a telegram arrived at Coca-Cola headquarters from General Dwight Eisenhower's Allied Command in North Africa. The message requested 10 portable bottling plants, 3 million bottles of Coca-Cola, and enough equipment to produce that quantity twice per month. Woodruff went even further. The company built 64 bottling plants around the world during the war, supplying American troops across Europe, North Africa, the Pacific, and Asia. To oversee this operation, Coca-Cola created a special group of employees known as technical observers. These 148 civilians wore military uniforms, held officer rank, and were tasked with ensuring that no American soldier would be without access to Coca-Cola. Soldiers nicknamed them Coca-Cola colonels. Military planes even transported empty bottles back to bottling plants to be refilled. By the end of the war, more than 5 billion bottles of Coca-Cola had been consumed by American military personnel. And when the war ended, the 64 bottling plants remained. They became the foundation of Coca-Cola's global distribution network. There is a popular myth worth addressing. The myth says that Coca-Cola invented the modern image of Santa Claus wearing red and white. The reality is more nuanced. The figure already existed long before the company began using it. But Coca-Cola played a crucial role in popularizing that image worldwide. In the 1930s, the company launched a series of winter advertising campaigns illustrated by artist Haddon Sundblom. The paintings showed a cheerful, warm, grandfatherly Santa Claus enjoying a bottle of Coca-Cola beside a fireplace, laughing with children, or resting during his long Christmas journey. These images did more than advertise a drink. They helped create a powerful emotional association between the brand and feelings of warmth, family, celebration, and joy. This was not accidental. It was part of a long-term strategy that Coca-Cola would repeat again and again, linking the brand to emotionally meaningful moments, holidays, family gatherings, sporting events, summer afternoons. The goal was never just to sell a beverage. It was to sell a feeling. Psychologists later described this mechanism as classical conditioning applied to consumer behavior, repeatedly pairing a product with positive emotions until the product itself begins to evoke those emotions automatically. The same principle guided Coca-Cola's partnership with the Olympic Games. Beginning in 1928 in Amsterdam, Coca-Cola became associated with the world's most prestigious celebration of human achievement. That association transferred prestige, excitement, and global unity to the brand itself. When American soldiers returned home after World War II, they carried more than memories. They carried habits. One of those habits was drinking Coca-Cola. The bottling plants built during the war were not dismantled. They became the foundation of a distribution system that would spread Coca-Cola across the planet. In post-war Europe, Coca-Cola came to symbolize modern American culture, but was also simply an enjoyable drink. In parts of South America and Africa, Coca-Cola sometimes replaced champagne during celebrations. In 1955, Coca-Cola began selling the drink in cans, making it even easier to transport and consume. In 1971, the company released one of the most famous commercials in advertising history. A group of young people from different countries stood together on a hilltop in Italy, singing the line, "I'd like to buy the world a Coke." The advertisement captured an idea larger than the product itself, a sense of global connection and shared humanity. By 2013, Coca-Cola products were sold in more than 200 countries and territories, with more than 1.8 billion servings consumed every day. By any measure, those numbers are extraordinary. Sometimes the true strength of a brand becomes visible not during its successes, but during its greatest mistakes. In April of 1985, Coca-Cola made one of the most controversial decisions in its corporate history. After decades of losing market share to Pepsi, especially among younger consumers who often preferred Pepsi's sweeter taste in blind tests, the company decided to reformulate its flagship product. The new formula was introduced as New Coke. The reaction was immediate, and it was overwhelmingly negative. Consumers across the United States reacted not as if a beverage had changed, but as if a piece of cultural identity had been taken away. The company's phone lines were flooded with complaints, sometimes reaching 40,000 calls per day. People began stockpiling the original Coca-Cola wherever they could find it. Protest groups appeared. Letters arrived by the thousands. What Coca-Cola had underestimated was something no taste test could measure: the emotional bond between consumers and the brand. Coca-Cola was not just a drink. It was memory. It was identity. It was part of millions of personal histories. 90 days after the launch of New Coke, the company reversed its decision. The original formula returned under a new name, Coca-Cola Classic. From a corporate perspective, the episode was humiliating, but it revealed something profound. When a brand becomes powerful enough, even its mistakes can strengthen it. The return of Coca-Cola Classic generated an explosion of media coverage and public celebration that no traditional marketing campaign could have achieved. Today, the New Coke episode is studied in business schools as a case study in the difference between product preference and brand loyalty. Looking back at the full story of Coca-Cola, something fascinating emerges. John Pemberton invented the drink while searching for relief from pain. Asa Candler recognized that the drink could become a commercial phenomenon. One man created the product. The other built the system that allowed it to conquer the world. Their contributions were radically different, but together they produced one of the most powerful business stories ever written. And there is something even more intriguing about this contrast. Pemberton never knew what he had created. He died poor, addicted, and unaware of the global empire his formula would one day generate. Candler, on the other hand, consistently underestimated the full potential of the product he helped build. He gave away the bottling rights for $1. He sold the company in 1919 for $25 million, a staggering sum at the time, but only a fraction of what the company would later become. This tells us something important about how great success stories actually unfold. They are rarely the result of a single perfect vision. Instead, they're built layer by layer by different people at different moments, each contributing pieces of insight. Coca-Cola was not created by a single genius who predicted everything from the beginning. It was created by imperfect humans whose decisions, sometimes intentional, sometimes accidental, accumulated over decades. When people think about global brands, they often imagine a perfectly planned strategy from the very beginning. A brilliant founder who saw everything clearly. A straight path from idea to global dominance. But reality is far more complex. And the story of Coca-Cola illustrates this truth better than almost any other business history. Great innovations often begin as small experiments. Experiments shaped by personal struggles, unexpected opportunities, or simple curiosity. Coca-Cola began because a wounded war veteran addicted to morphine tried to create an alternative to the substance that controlled his life. It grew because an Atlanta pharmacist recognized commercial potential where others saw only a medicinal tonic. It expanded across the United States because two lawyers convinced the company's owner to give them bottling rights for $1. It became global because World War II transformed temporary bottling plants built for soldiers into the foundation of the world's largest beverage distribution system. And it remained powerful because the company eventually understood something fundamental. It was not in the business of selling soda. It was in the business of selling feelings. On May 8, 1886, a man carried a jar of syrup down the street to a pharmacy. That day, 9 servings were sold. 9 people paid 5 cents for a glass of a new drink that nobody had asked for, nobody had imagined before, and that almost nobody believed would last more than a few weeks. Today, every second, thousands of cans, bottles, and glasses of Coca-Cola are opened across every continent on Earth. And this story inevitably raises a question. What would have happened if John Pemberton had lived long enough to see what he created? What would have happened if Asa Candler had never tasted that drink on an ordinary afternoon in Atlanta? What would have happened if the bottling rights had never been sold for $1? We don't know. What we do know is that each of those decisions, and dozens of others across more than 130 years, was made by ordinary people in ordinary moments. People who had no idea they were building something extraordinary. And perhaps that is the most powerful lesson in the history of Coca-Cola. The greatest things humanity has ever created rarely begin with grandeur. They begin with someone in a small laboratory trying to solve a small problem, trying to survive, trying to build something meaningful. And occasionally, when timing, vision, and persistence align, the result becomes something the entire world recognizes. Even if most people never stop to wonder how it all began,